This week, we're talking about our top 5 sidekicks in video games. I bet we have a few you forgot about. After that, on the change-up, it's only 30 yards to a first down. We will be talking about the good old days of NFL Blitz. And then on the brushback, we'll be talking about useless things. And included in that discussion will be screen doors on submarines, parachutes made of lead, and this recently announced Last of Us Remake that I'm pretty sure nobody asked for. And then finally, on the bottom of the ninth, it's the 35th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. Is that right?
That's
we'll
right.
We'll find out. All that and more coming up in 3, 2, 1. Roll the intro, Mom. People out there, greetings and welcome to Console Control, the show where two old heads who play video games talk about video games and whatever else we might feel like kicking around. I am your co-host Cracks, and I am joined as always by also your co-host
Den is in the building.
It's another week down. We're still kicking.
Ain't that the truth?
Somehow.
Ain't that the
Somehow,
truth?
some way. I didn't have any long stretches to play a lot of stuff this week. I had a lot of very small stretches to play stuff this week, so I didn't get to... I think I probably got another maybe 2 or 3 hours into Disco Elysium, like by the time it's all said and done, like 15 minutes here, 30 minutes here. Aside from that, though, I have to confess I have actually been working on my Tekken game a little bit. I picked up Tekken 7 a little while back. Yeah.
Sharpening the skills, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure. I don't think I could tell you exactly why I'm doing that because I'm not very good. I'm definitely not what I was. But it's, I like having stuff to work at, so it's been good. It's been good. But yeah, all in all, a pretty quiet week. Disco Elysium, by its very nature, is a very subtle and understated and quiet sort of affair. So I don't have any like earth-shattering revelations about that game yet. So that's still cooking.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, it was a pretty uneventful week for myself as well. I only got probably 3 hours to play this week, and I picked up a much anticipated PSVR title called Alvo. And this game has a very interesting story. It was probably 3 years ago. They put a cinematic trailer out, and on this cinematic trailer, like it looked like just an amazing shooter, and then
Don't they all?
yeah, and then I think like 6 months later, like it built up all this hype, and then it got canceled. So this is where the cool part comes in, is like just a couple of fans of the trailer like went in, contacted the developers, and were like, "We need to do this. Like, how much money do you need? We got to make this happen." So they went all in, and they've been working on it for 2 years, and I think those original backers realized that maybe they didn't have the capital that they needed to put out the game that they wanted.
Of course not.
It's really cool. So I think the game hit market a little before they really are ready to. But what they're hoping is they're hoping that sales from the game, like I think it's actually $10 cheaper than retail right now, just because they're doing like a weird kind of Kickstarter thing with the PlayStation Network. Is they're putting it out there. They want people to buy it just to kind of fund like the next update, and then in the next update they'll make it this much better, and then hopefully, the game catches on, and by the time it's been out for a year, it's that full AAA cinematic trailer that they hoped for from 3 years ago. But pretty cool story. So I went ahead and backed the game. I've been playing it. It's good. Like, it's a good shooter. It's comparable to Firewall. I wouldn't say it's as polished as Firewall, but the game moves are very fun. You can slide and run and jump, and it's pretty good.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was
It
pretty
sounds like
good.
there's maybe a little bit more functionality than Firewall might have had, even though it wasn't as polished, huh?
Yeah, like the big thing about Alvo that everybody freaks out about is the scopes, and I don't know if you remember Honor and Duty, sorry, that
Yeah, yeah. It's a tongue twister of a title. Honor and Duty, D-Day.
yeah,
How many D's do you want to say? Yeah.
yeah, that the scopes that were in that game, but it
Yeah.
works the same way. So you put the little aim
Okay.
controller up to your eye, and then it
Right.
zooms in at a
That's
distance.
cool.
So
And probably
it's essentially Firewall, except the ability to use sniper rifles and stuff.
okay.
So it's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
neat.
cool. That's cool. I remember when I before I had an aim controller, I was playing Honor and Duty with moves, and like it felt super weird because like you had to like bring both hands up to your eye, and it didn't feel natural at all, but it did get the scope to work. It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Those stories are always uplifting, man. Those are just such feel-good stories, aren't they? When something gets brought back from the dead, I'm finding out that like those are my favorite things to read about in the news or any kind of news. There's a show on HBO Max called Warrior that was really good, and it got 2 seasons. I think it was on Cinemax at first, and it got 2 seasons, and then it got canceled because corporate suits hate everyone and everything, and it was one of those deals where like nobody really expected it to come back, but then just things being the way they are, there was that whole big restructuring at HBO or like Time Warner or whoever, who knows anymore. I don't know who owns what anymore, but there's this big corporate restructuring, and somebody on the board was like, "Hey, this show is actually pretty good. Maybe we should bring this back. Can you guys come back and work on this?" And everybody was like, "Yeah, we can work on it. It was great." And so the show just from out of nowhere is coming back, and I think they're going into production on the third season like later this year, which is really great news because that show deserved a lot of credit for a lot of things.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I love
it's
that
always
stuff.
nice to hear about that stuff that just like the referee has counted it out, but like it didn't hear the referee count it out, so
Yeah.
it just keeps on trucking, man.
Not today. You ain't
Yeah,
getting me today.
yep.
Love it.
Very cool, very cool. That's been the week, folks. Here comes the heat. So this is an interesting one. I like the choice. I think I got a lot of things in here that people are bound to have forgotten about. And I'm going to say it now. I'm going to say it now. There's no redundancy. No redundancy on this list. Like
Wow.
maybe one of them, maybe, but it depends on how fresh your memory is, honestly. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. I mean, I'm ready when you are. If you want to kick us off with number 5, feel free to do so.
Well, I got to start by giving a shout out to Snizzy. Snizzy the Beast came through in the comments, and he said he wanted to see a top 5 of the best sidekicks / companions out there.
Great pick. Yeah, great pick.
And I said, man, that's a great idea for a show. So we, the criteria that I used in this one was exactly that. I had a hard time differentiating between sidekicks and companions in a game, so I just threw them all into the same thing. So
Yeah,
but
that
yeah,
makes sense.
kicking it off, I'm starting with a pretty obscure one. It's Clementine from the Walking Dead Telltale games.
Oh, okay.
So for those that aren't familiar,
I'm not familiar.
yeah, Clementine is this little girl that's in the Telltale Walking Dead game, the first season. The game is a story-driven, point-and-click adventure style game with like a few quick-time moments thrown into it. So it's a pretty slow-paced game. It's very story-driven. It's not about read and react. It's a slow-paced game. It takes place someplace in Georgia shortly after the zombie apocalypse breaks out. You play as Lee, a former convict, a 37-year-old former convict that shortly into the zombie apocalypse, he crosses paths with this young girl, Clementine, who's probably 10 years old, if I had to guess. So
I guess this is the girl that you see in all the like the promo stuff.
that's the one.
Yeah, okay,
That's the
right.
one. So it's Lee basically spends the majority of his time escorting this little girl to safety, but it's pretty neat because he doesn't really know how to be a dad. Like, he's not this girl's dad, but at the same time he feels for this girl's dad. It's without without tossing out any spoilers like somebody else likes to do in the show.
No mercy on this side of the screen, baby. You know what you're getting into. Y'all already know what it is. I ain't watching what I say.
But
You're
yeah,
warned.
I couldn't possibly spoil this game because I know that a lot of people haven't played it, and you might play it after watching this. I don't know how much it's on sale for, but my guess is $5 or less.
Yeah.
And Clementine plays a vital role in the story and the gameplay and everything, and it is a well orchestrated story to where each decision that you make or don't make, you really feel the weight of it. And I think the main reason that you feel the weight of these decisions that you make in the story is because you have this little 10-year-old girl like at your side, and you feel responsible for her safety and well-being. And it's a great story.
That is good stuff.
Yeah, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but
Good on you.
she's got a real doozy of an ending. I'll tell you that much.
All right. All right.
So that's my number 5. Cracks.
Sounds like a good number 5. My number 5 is from a game that I don't even like. It's
All right.
Aggro from Shadow of the Colossus. Aggro is the horse, without which the game would be completely unplayable, in my opinion. Look, I know. Like I've become sort of a hotbed of hot takes the last couple of weeks. I've said some really controversial things so far. This is probably the most controversial thing I've said, because I know Shadow of the Colossus has fans on top of fans on top of fans. And look, I get it. I understand why people like that game. My experience with that game was just, I guess, kind of different from most other people's experience with that game. Or I don't know if it was different, or if it had just been out so long that it had time to get just the whole hype train had been behind it for such a long time, and I've been hearing about it for like a period of years. And then one day it was free on PlayStation Plus, and so I was like, oh, I get to see what the hype is about. And it just wasn't really for me. I found myself kind of mystified. Not that I want this whole entry to be just me ripping Shadow of the Colossus, but I need to emphasize why Aggro was such a big deal, right? Like, for me, I was kind of mystified as to how a game that has camera work this obnoxious didn't get ripped for that, like in every review that I read. And it was like nobody noticed how obnoxious the camera worked in this game. It was terrible. The controls were kind of clunky. And by the time I had felled my 5th or maybe even 6th Colossus, I just got to thinking, like, man, this is starting to feel really repetitive. And like the game does look very good. I mean, I played the remaster; it did look very good. But the world is very large and pretty empty for the most part. And all there really is to do is to go out and hunt these big colossi, right? And you kill them in generally the same way, and you use kind of the same sort of thinking to do what you got to do in every case. I mean, each Colossus was different, and you couldn't do it exactly the same way, but it was roughly the same process from Colossus 1 to Colossus 6 in my experience. I mean, I don't really know what happened with that because I didn't follow through any further than that. But on to Aggro, which is the horse's name. The place is so big and so empty that, like, without having a horse to ride from point A to point B, the game would have been unplayable. And so that's why Aggro finds its way onto this list, because it made a game that would have been unplayable for me at least playable. So that's number 5 on the list. I know, look, feel free to light me up in the comments. I know whoever sees this is going to do it because that's a hugely popular game. And I'm not saying I don't understand why. I mean, it feels like there's just a ton of mystery in this world, but there's not. Like, it's got a really cool feeling to it, and story-wise, there's not much there, and it's all very mysterious, and I don't know. I guess people think that's cool. I don't know. Like, normally I would think that was cool, except it just didn't feel to me like there was any real substance to it at the end. So I highlight Aggro because he sort of single-handedly saves that experience. You can factor him into your battles with some of the colossi sometimes. So it was just cool the way the way the horse worked. You could call him over to you and do cool stuff with him like that. So yeah, that's companion number 5 for Cracks. So sorry for ripping Shadow of the Colossus. I know everybody loves it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I actually never got around to playing that game. when the remake was free with PlayStation Plus, I downloaded it, and then you told me, you were like, what's extremely overrated?
Yeah.
You told me, I was like, yeah, I'm probably not
Yeah,
gonna play it.
I think I just got victimized by the hype of it. It had been out for so long, like long enough that they had that remaster out, So like when it was new, I didn't play it, and I had known multiple people that told me, you know what, the best game you've never played is Shadow of the Colossus. You need to play that. And so I heard that for years, and then when I got in, my reaction was just kind of, this, huh? Really?
Okay.
Like this is the best game I've ever played? That's unlikely, but that's number 5.
Nice.
Moving on.
Nice one. So my number 4 is a fella named Toe Jam. From Toe Jam and Earl.
You got one that I forgot about. I forgot all about.
From the Toe Jam and Earl franchises.
Yeah.
For those that aren't familiar with Toe Jam from the Toe Jam and Earl franchises, Toe Jam really made the game fun. Like the whole game was about how fun and funky and fresh and hip hoppy. It was like the first like hip hoppy, fun, funky, fresh video game that there was, and Toe Jam was a major part of that. But let me give you a story of my boy Toe Jam. I got to read a quote here, and this quote just perfectly sums him up. Toe Jam is feared and admired by all other rappers, desired by all the hottest ladies of Funkatron, and looked up to by all as a leader and a role model. In his dreams. The truth is, Toe J's natural abilities are considerable, but they are nothing compared to his self-confidence, which is about the size of a planet. Toe Jam's biggest dream is to have a girlfriend, any girlfriend, which to this day, in Toe Jam's view, he just hasn't picked the right one. Toe Jam knows without any doubt that the best way to win a girl over is to wear her down with his sharp and irresistible wit, overwhelm her with his raw, undiluted charm, and impress her with his third leg. What? He's got 3 legs? That's the story of Toe Jam That's there.
Crazy.
It's not totally different from Kenny Fisher, aka Special K from the Can't Hardly Wait movie.
Right. Speaking of things that are underrated.
But yeah, like Toe Jam and Earl was a childhood favorite of mine. Like I really loved that game, and the little quote kind of talked about it, that talking about his natural abilities, and he was just so much faster and fluid. Like he was so much more fluid to play with than Earl. Like Earl was just so clunky and slow. Like he could take a beating, but it was just so hard to maneuver around the world with him, and it kind of frustrating to play as Earl, to be honest. But Toe Jam and Earl was a childhood favorite of mine. Can't Hardly Wait was a childhood favorite movie of mine, and that's why my main G, Toe Jam, is number 4 on this list. Shout out to Toe Jam. Seize up, boy. Console control, seize up.
Yeah. So at a time when every kid wanted attitude in his video game characters, Toe Jam delivered it to you.
Toe Jam delivered. I mean,
he gave it to people.
Much like Special K from Can't Hardly Wait and Toe Jam from Toe Jam and Earl, like I really associated with that because I was kind of the same way when I was like 14 and 15 years old playing this game. I thought I was so cool. I was like throwing gang signs up. Look, I still do it to this day. Seize up. Seize up.
Yeah, I feel like that quote, wherever you pulled that from, basically described an entire generation of teenage kids.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great.
Voice of the people, if there ever was one.
Yeah, man. So that's my number 4.
Good 4.
Favorite sidekick of all time.
Good 4. My number 4.
Who's your number 4?
Rush from Mega Man 3.
Oh, okay.
You may remember Rush as the pink robotic dog that would come in and like do different things. You could call Rush. He could be like 3 different things. I forget exactly what, honestly. The one I remember the most is like he would come in and be like some kind of little hoverboard thing that would like take you across the screen from left to right. I think he might have been able to turn into a submarine too. Don't quote me on that. My memory's fuzzy and I didn't research it. I just pulled all this straight from memory. So like, I don't remember exactly what Rush did aside from doing that little like hoverboard thing, which was great for Mega Man because I remember he made a lot of those levels where in Mega Man you had to spend a lot of time navigating those obstacle course type screens where like the platform would be there and then it would disappear and you had to like jump on it, but you had to be off of it in time for the thing to you know what I mean? And you had to like navigate a whole screen with that kind of thing. But if you had enough energy to power Rush up, you could just call Rush in there and Rush would just come in and he would just carry you across the whole thing, smooth as butter.
Nice.
And just based on the fact that like he saved me so much stress, because once again, I get tired of saying it, but no checkpoints, kids. We're not talking, we're not dealing with checkpoints. So in those high risk situations where there's these like blinking platforms, and so like you can jump on the platform when it's there, but when it disappears, you'll fall. There's all these blinking platforms, and then beneath it is just the abyss. It's certain death. Like if you're standing on a platform too long and it goes away, you're dead. That's it. You're starting over. And Rush, in a lot of situations, took away the stress of getting way far into that game and then having to navigate platforms and possibly die. Rush was there to help you out if you had the energy for him. I mean, could he have used a little more battery? Of course. Well, he couldn't use a little more battery. You know, it would be great if he could just sort of be part of the game permanently, but he would have been overpowered, I guess. So I understand the design decision. But that's number 4, Rush from Mega Man 3.
Yeah, that's a really good pick because those Mega Man games were so hard. Like that's all I really remember from all of them. You know, I couldn't tell you which volumes I played, but I played probably four of them or so, and all I remember about each one is just how difficult they were. And if Rush made it easier in any way, shape, or form, he deserves to be in the top 5 of this list.
Yep. That's the reality, and that's what it is at number 4.
Yeah, great choice.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3.
Number 3.
I've played a lot of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Every playthrough, I try to link up with my number 3 sidekick of all time, Shadowmere.
Wow, man. Yeah, good one.
Shadowmere, man, it's like if the Middle Ages had Pimp My Ride. They ultimately would just take like your average old Mustang, just your average old horse, and they would just turn him into Shadowmere. Like he was just a murdered out horse with red eyes. That man, I mean, he was super intimidating. He was fast. He could outrun like most of the wildlife that you would come across in Tamriel. Like if you played that game, you know that like there's just a vast map, and as you go through this map, random things just are around each corner, and they'll come at you. But if you had Shadowmere, you could outrun just about all of them, so you didn't have to deal with them, and it was a good way to get you from A to B. And then the few things that you had to deal with, all you had to do was just hop off of Shadowmere, and then what would often happen is the opposition would key into Shadowmere and start fighting him, and Shadowmere would fight back, man. He was sometimes he would just take things down on his own.
That's funny.
And man, he was one of the greatest characters. You know, I have to say that Shadowmere was damn near invincible, and the reason that I have to say damn near is I accidentally
lost him, didn't you?
I accidentally killed him one day.
You killed him?
Yeah.
Or you got him killed? Because there's a big difference.
Oh, I killed him. It was bad. Like for those that played the game, you know about those goddamn mountains and how traversing those mountains was just like you didn't like your objective would be right here and you are right here, but there was a mountain range, so you could either wander all the way across this thing or try to navigate the thing. And I was trying to navigate it on the back of Shadowmere, and we took a leap of faith, and man, I'll never forget the ungodly noise that he made when we hit the ground, and he just crumbled to the ground, and he did not get up. And man, like it.
That was the end of the Shadowmere saga.
It hurt me so bad. Like I'm not even gonna lie. Like from time to time, I would go back to the spot where I accidentally killed Shadowmere, and I would leave like various skeever meats or some nightshade down. Sometimes I'd even leave gold.
Right.
And I'd leave it all there in memory of my trusty steed Shadowmere. So
Yeah.
for those of you watching this at home, do me a favor, man. I'm about to tear up, no lie. For those of you at home watching this, pour out a little skooma for my fallen boy Shadowmere. Never forgotten. Gone, but
May you
never
rest in
forgotten.
peace. Lived like a warrior, died like a warrior. Didn't question it. You know, you were like, hey, Shadowmere, jump off this cliff for me, bro. He was like, you got it, boss.
He was like,
Anything you say.
yeah, it was like you had to like walk down the side in a weird way, and
Yeah.
he would navigate it so perfectly. And then one time he just took a jump, and it was like, no, this isn't going to end well. And it ended very poorly.
Yeah, as impatience is wont to do. Because be honest, that's what it was, right? You know you were scaling up and down those mountains just because you didn't want to walk around the mountain.
That's right. That's what it was.
Yeah. You know, he deserves his place at number 3 on this list, higher than number 5, where I have my horse sidekick, because let's be real, he's actually in a good game. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. That's the last shot I'm going to take at Shadow of the Colossus today. I'm done taking shots at Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, like I wore black today, just as like in respect to my fallen boy Shadowmere, but I need to wear black and due to Dale just burying Shadow of the Colossus.
For sure. For sure. Don't mean to go in on it that hard, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. I promise. I'm not going to rip Shadow of the Colossus anymore today. That's that.
So, number 3.
My number 3 is a bird.
A bird.
A bird. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, where was there a bird in video games that was like a functional sidekick? I'll tell you where. An NES game, an old NES game called 8 Eyes. Do you have any recollection of this game at all?
Nope.
I kind of suspected that might have been the case. As far as I know, I was the only person anywhere who ever played that game, but I don't know. More people must have, but I didn't know anybody who did. So what it was you were this dude, and this dude had a bird. The bird, I'm pretty sure he was a falcon. His name was Citrus, or I want to say Citrus, but like it definitely wasn't Citrus. I think it was Citrus maybe.
Citrus the kiwi bird.
Citrus the kiwi bird. Yeah. You had this falcon, and the falcon would just kind of ride around on the dude's shoulder. So like as you navigated all these different like palaces, there were a bunch of different palaces, and in each palace there was a boss, and each boss had a gem. And the point of the game was to go to all these palaces and fight all these bosses and get all these gems and then line them up the right way at the end of the game. Well, as you went through these palaces, there were just like, enemies on top of enemies, and the bird would ride around on your shoulder. Well, and again, this is NES, remember? So like for the NES, this felt pretty innovative to me at the time. You could get the bird to leave your shoulder. So the bird would lift off sort of, and then he would start flying around the screen. He would like go up and down, and he would go to this pattern where there's like up and down and up and down, and he would just kind of go from right to left. Now you could control his elevation on the screen, and you could also control when he would dive attack a dude. So you could control your dude at the same time that you could control this bird and have him dive attacking dudes at the same time. Now, for that little rectangle controller from back in the day, this was like to me, it was like a pretty impressive feat. And even now, today, looking back on it, I find myself wondering, like, how did they manage to do that with two buttons
cool.
and a keypad? But they did, and it worked. It worked really well, actually. The only thing you couldn't do was, if he was flying to the right, you couldn't turn him back to the left. Like, you had to wait for him to bounce off the right side of the screen, and then he would start going back to the left. And then you would have to wait for him to hit the left, and he'd go back to the right side of the screen. But he was very, very useful in a fight, killing all these dudes that just hung out in palaces, guys who were breathing fire and throwing swords, and all kinds of stuff was going on. I mean, you're seeing the footage. You see what the was going on. He could also find things that you had no other way to get to. So what that game liked to do is they liked to hide a lot of secrets in just like the bricks of the palace that you couldn't really get. It's kind of hard to explain because the whole thing is just 2D. It wasn't an overtop thing like Zelda was. It was like you're looking at it from the side and you're looking at it 2D. So like there would be these really thick columns of bricks, and you couldn't reach the middle of the bricks, because it was just too thick. So you could see what was on your side, and you could see if you got close enough to the wall, you could see what was on the other side, but you couldn't reach the middle. But they would hide stuff in there. So what the bird could do is you could send the bird to fly across the bricks and have him dive attack a block, and if there was something hidden in that block, he would get it. And so he had a tremendous amount of utility, and he made a very very difficult game a lot of fun, just because you got to control a bird and a dude at the same time, which was, as far as I knew at the time, unprecedented.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I for the NES, it was to have two things going that you could control simultaneously and have their own separate sorts of functionality. I think it had been done in ways where you kind of had to do the same thing with both things at the same time, but I don't think I had ever seen an instance where one guy could do one thing and another guy could do another thing. And you could even bring in a second player that could just control the bird. You could be controlling the dude, and your buddy could be sitting over there, and he would decide then what the bird did and how the bird flew and stuff. It was great. It was great. I have always missed that game. That was a good game.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't realize that they were doing things like that back then.
Yeah, I don't know that they were, but that game definitely did it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Citrus the kiwi bird. I'm gonna have to. It's bugging me. I'm gonna have to look up his name. I probably butchered his name. It's it was something very close to Citrus.
I'm sure 64-bit cracks will have something to say about.
When does he not have something to say?
Yeah.
Gotta talk to that guy.
Spicy bastard.
We always try to one up each other on the hot takes we bring to the show. I feel like he's winning.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to rip Shadow of the Colossus a couple more times just to close the gap. I'm not going to do it. I promised I was done. I'm done. Number two.
The artist formerly known as Puff Daddy Kong, Diddy Kong.
Man, would you believe that I didn't even consider Diddy Kong?
Yeah.
He didn't even cross my mind.
Look, usually it's once per episode I reference my background in some kind of way, and that's essentially what Diddy Kong is here. Is Diddy Kong, for those that don't know him, is the nephew of Donkey Kong. His first appearance was in Donkey Kong Country and for the Super Nintendo in, I think, 1994, somewhere around then. Now, before this, there was Tails from Sonic the Hedgehog, and before that, there was Yoshi from Super Mario World. And those three characters were all just very similar to me. Yoshi had a lot more functionality, in my opinion, than Tails and Diddy Kong. But the playground was the buzz with all three of these guys. When they showed up, it was oh, have you played the Sonic with the guy that can fly? And it's yeah, I mean, can he fly though? He just kind of hovers 2 inches off the ground. He doesn't do anything different than what Sonic does. And the same for Diddy Kong. Diddy Kong and Donkey Kong Country, even though his uncle Donkey Kong was this big, bulbous, beefy, brawny bastard, Diddy did the exact same things as him. The physics were the exact same. It's just one had a hat and looked cuter.
Right.
Everybody loved him. They're oh, Diddy Kong's the best. I want to be Diddy. Let me be Diddy Kong. Let me be Diddy Kong. It's
I think it was because he wore the hat.
Yeah, the backwards hat made him seem youthful and
made him seem fresh.
Hip.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was no toe jam, but
yeah.
It was enough to get the kids to like him, I guess. Was there a difference in jumping height between those two dudes, or were they really just the same?
They were just the same. Yeah.
Couldn't Diddy Kong do some kind of cartwheel?
Well, that was it. Is when you hit the sprint button, Diddy Kong would do a cartwheel to get started, where Donkey would just, kind of shoulder charge to get started. So it was it was basically essentially the same.
Okay, so the functionality wasn't different. It just was something that looked different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was it.
Okay.
So really, number two on my list is really the three of them. Yoshi is probably the more functional of the three, but me just being a guy that doesn't buy the hype all the time, it's the hype on Yoshi and Tails and Diddy was just through the roof, and everybody's like, "These are the best. These are the best. These are the best."
Yep.
But really, the blue Yoshi was the jam. You know, if we were talking about Yoshis, I'd be talking about the blue Yoshi. But
Top 5 Yoshis all time.
yeah, top five
You never
Yoshis.
know. Stay tuned. You
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah, yeah. So that's number 2 on my list.
It's a good one. That's a good one. That's respectable.
Yeah.
They all
So
fit into a nice, neat little package of sidekickery.
yeah. So Cracks, who's your runner-up sidekick of all time?
I didn't talk about him last week, but I should have. It's Atreus from God of War. I know that God of War clocked in at number 1 on last week's list, specifically because the combat was so good, and Atreus finds his way onto number 2 of this list for the exact same reason. I'll say it again. The combat of that game is the best combat I feel I've ever experienced in a game. Looked great, felt great, sounded great. The design of that whole thing was just amazing, and Atreus was a big part of that. He wasn't just there to like babysit, because that could have been that. You see the way a lot of games handle that kind of situation where there's a very large, very powerful dude and then a less large, less powerful character nearby. A lot of games turn that into a reason to babysit something. And God of War did not do that. This was not an escort mission, you know what I mean? And it could have, with the wrong people making the wrong decisions, that could have turned out to be not nearly as cool as it was. But Atreus pulled his weight, man. Atreus was very useful in combat. It was possible and fun, frankly, to establish this rhythm with him where like he had this bow and you had to do this thing where you like trigger him to use his bow. And he was generally really smart about like what he targeted. His focus was generally where your focus was. And, in those moments where you were too busy to really think about what Atreus is doing, Atreus is keeping himself alive and just contributing on his own. Not really that much different from Shadowmere when you get right down to it. Like it was just, if you had to do it, you could leave him on his own and he would pull his weight and you didn't really have to worry about him. And I can't say enough good things about the design of that game's combat. And so I put Atreus right here on the number 2 slot of top 5 sidekicks of all time, because he was not only was he actually a pretty cool character that contributed an immense amount to a really good story, but he in a really good combat system, he was one of the good parts about it. So number 2.
Yeah, no lie. When I put Clementine at number 5 on my list, I was thinking about kids in video games, and I was like, there just aren't really that many kids in video games, and I think, in Clementine's case, like adding a kid to that game really made the weight of the story that much higher. And Atreus was very similar, same kind of thing. That's a good pick.
Yeah, not to mention, I can't believe I didn't mention this. One last thing I want to say about this kid is that Kratos as a character, for me personally, was one of the most unlikable characters in the history of video games until God of War 2018. Until God of War 2018 came around. When God of War 2018 came around, he went from this completely unlikable sort of rage monster that just, his only mode was anger. Like that was the only thing that he did. He just got super angry all the time. And in God of War 2018, Atreus created a reason for him to be an actual good character and like to feel like something real and not like something that was contrived or just there to, or just there for the machismo of it. You know what I mean? Like Atreus fixed all of that. So just a little shout out to that as well. Atreus was a great character.
Yeah, nice. I like it. It's my number 1, man. This is it. Greatest sidekick of all time. Truthfully, he's never been a sidekick to me. He's always been number 1 in my heart. It's me, Luigi.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you who Luigi is, because if you don't know who Luigi is, you're watching the wrong channel. Like,
for sure.
You shouldn't be watching this right here. But, that said, I'm glad that you're here. Like, subscribe. But yeah, growing up with an older brother, I was always forced to be Luigi. That's kind of how green became my favorite color. But the joke was on my older brother because in Super Mario Brothers 2, Luigi was so much better than Mario. Like Luigi was probably the best character in that game. However, the joke was on me again because then my brother was Luigi all the time and he forced me to be Toad. So who's the real sucker here? But
Yeah,
I
Toad
have
is that too.
yeah, yeah. But I have to say that I modeled my life after Luigi because he was always the good brother that always tried to help out and just never got the recognition, the notoriety, or the thanks for all the good deeds of. Because I mean, he was there trying to save Princess Peach just as much as Mario was, and once Peach was saved, she'd come over, give Mario a big kiss on the cheek, and everybody's like, "Yay, Mario saved the day! Mario saved the day!" And Luigi's just sitting there like, "Yo, for real? All right, yeah. I mean, go Mario, way to go! Glad I could help."
Yep.
But I gotta say the older that I get, I find myself modeling my life more after Luigi.
I think that's just something that comes with age. We get jaded. It's not our fault.
Yeah.
It just happens.
But yeah, man, Luigi and Waluigi, they're probably my two favorite characters of the Mario series. And, Luigi is, you can ask people that don't even really know much about video games who the best video game sidekick is, and they'll just turn right to Luigi. But he's always been number one in my heart. Shouts out Luigi.
He's a household name. How long was it before Luigi got his own game?
Man, well, I think it was Luigi's Mansion, and I think that was I think it might have been a GameCube game. So GameCube came out somewhere around 2001, somewhere in that range.
Okay, still overdue.
Oh yeah. So you're talking 20 years or so of Mario before
Getting
Luigi,
all the cred.
Yeah, before Luigi got his own game.
Mario got Bob Hoskins. Luigi got John Leguizamo.
Yeah, buddy.
Not that I'm not ripping John Leguizamo. I think John Leguizamo is fantastic. Yeah, but I do think that it was just a weird casting. Huh?
He's no Bob Hoskins.
He's no Bob Hoskins. Yeah, I mean, who is or who was? Poor little Al. Rest in peace, Bob. But yeah, like it just, even as a kid, as excited as I was that they were making a movie about a video game, it seemed like a weird casting because you looked at Bob Hoskins, you're like, oh yeah, okay, Mario, right? And then you looked at Luigi and it was like, he seems young.
Yeah, I had always known the live action version of Mario to be Captain Lou Albano, so I just wasn't. I was like, what is this? Who's this?
Yeah.
Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo? What is this? Dennis Hopper's in this movie?
Who are these guys?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That's my number one. Cracks. Who's at the top of your list?
That's a good number one. It's a household name. My number one, far more recent an innovation than Luigi, and that is D-Dog from Metal Gear Solid 5. So here's what I have to say. I mean, really, I could have bundled all the companions in that game because they all contributed heavily to the way that game played. Like, depending on who you took out into the field, there was the dog, there was a horse, there was Quiet, and there was like a mechanical walker. So there were like 4 different things that you could take out into the field with you. And each one of those 4 things drastically impacted the way you played that game, which, from a design perspective, like it was, I don't really consider that game part of the official Metal Gear storyline, even though it is, but like it didn't really feel that way to me. But from a gameplay perspective, MGS5 was far and away the best. And I mean, second place wasn't even close. That was such a good game to just play, very fun to play. And that whole buddy system was a big part of the reason why it was. Like they all you could play the same stage multiple times, and if you went out there 4 times, each time with a different buddy, it was like a different stage. It was insane how they managed to do that in that game. It was really, really well done. I chose the dog specifically because the dog was just my favorite one. Like, so what he would do is you take him out there and he would automatically tag all the enemies that he was pretty close to. And he actually had a pretty wide range. So it just made it easier to see where the dudes were walking around, which if you know anything at all about Metal Gear, you know, if you know where the dudes are walking, it makes life a whole lot easier. And D-Dog was there for that. Not only that, but you could also outfit him with like this little bulletproof vest harness thing, and send him out and actually like fight dudes and distract. You could make him bark, so he would distract guys, and you could send him over there and make him bark, so like he could lead guys over this way, and then you could sneak up on him from behind, or you could kid him out with this little like. He had this little like stun rod that he would hold in his mouth, and you could like go sick him on a dude, and he would just run up to this dude and just stun him. And so if there was like it was great. If there was a whole squad of dudes, you could send the dog in there just to get one specific dude, but then as soon as if you timed your approach right, the dog would come in and like stun the one dude, and then the rest of the dudes would just like turn in that direction and be like, oh, look, what's going on? There's a dog stunning the dude. But by the time they get their heads around what's going on, you're already on them, and it's game over. And that was one of the most fun things I've ever done in a video game, honestly. I did that so many times. It was my favorite. It was my go-to move. And just, you know, to highlight what a tremendous game that was, and what a tremendous function that particular companion / sidekick had, and how much more fun and how much more different, honestly, that dog could make the play experience. Number one on the list, D-Dog, MGS5. If you haven't played MGS5, I can't say I blame you, because it has a bit of a reputation. Metal Gear fans tend to not like it much because it doesn't really have much of a story, honestly. And people who don't play Metal Gear didn't play it because it's a Metal Gear game. So I don't really think that game got the attention that, like, gameplay wise, it definitely deserved. Like, it was far and away the best one of those games in the whole series gameplay wise. So D-Dog was a big part of that. Clock him in at number one.
Awesome.
So tell me, who did we miss? I said at the top of the hour, I thought we were going to find some that the good people out there probably forgot about. Don't know how many people remember Rush. Apparently nobody knows about Citrus, right? So we worked a couple of gems in there, but I'm curious to know, who did we miss? Who are your favorite sidekicks in video games of all time? Let us know, by all means. That said, let's start with Change. So 30 yards to a first down. That's the first thing I remember about NFL Blitz, is that it was football, but it was crazy, crazy football.
Yeah, man, like NFL Blitz, you know, for those that haven't played it, it's kind of a more obscure version of NBA Jam. Like it took a sport that we all know and love, football, and it just made it arcadey. It made it this arcade video game that was just really fun to play. It was on every aspect. It was in the arcades. It was on Dreamcast. It was on PlayStation 1. I'm probably on 100 other consoles. But yeah, it was really good. It brought the street aspect to it. So if you've ever played NFL Street or NBA Street or any of those games like that, where they take the original sport and they put their own special twist to it to make it fun, that's what NFL Blitz was. And I think it was just a very underrated arcade game, like where you could just pick it up, and whether you knew a lot about football or not, like all you really had to know was the goals to score a touchdown. And if you had that premise down, well, you knew how to play the game, and it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I remember it being allowed to like just throw an insane number of passes.
Yeah.
Just like in the same play. Like like not that you could throw pass after pass, like play after play, but like in the same play, you could throw it, and then throw it forward, or maybe even more than one forward pass was allowed. I don't remember exactly. I just remember it was crazy, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot. There was a lot of really cool things to it, where you could, jump and hurdle and dive, and probably the most notable thing was, as you could hit players after the whistle, you could just keep tackling them repeatedly. There was various suplexes and slams and all the other stuff that
they didn't care about forward progress either. I remember, like, if you ran like 10 yards toward the first down marker, and a guy could hit you, and he could pick you up and carry you 10 yards back and put you down, and that's where the ball went. Like, you didn't get no forward progress in NFL Blitz.
Yeah, like basically NFL Blitz was everything that Roger Goodell has taken out of the original game.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's
we
fair.
don't like touchdown celebrations. We
Yeah.
don't like unnecessary roughness. We don't
Yeah.
like fun.
Right. Right. Yeah.
that's it.
NFL Blitz is sort of a emblematic of what we've all lost in the real game these days. It's very true. Yeah, that's a really good point, because that's where did all the fun go? Who knows, man? Time has just eroded it, like 100 years of wind and rain on the face of a mountain. It's been dulled, worn down over time. It's unrecognizable. It's just not the same game, not the same mountain it once was.
Nope.
I'm done.
Nope. Yeah,
That's my metaphor.
yeah. If the NFL would get rid of their exclusive license with EA, we'd probably see a reiteration of it, and it would be great. Like
Yeah.
I would buy it immediately and
Yeah.
play the crap out of it.
At the risk of adding an entire unplanned segment to this show, we're going to go ahead and move on from there,
Wise choice.
because that's going to be the only thing we discuss. We see you.
Yeah.
We see you.
I said the
EA.
name Roger Goodell, and my eyes turned red like shadow
Yeah,
mirrors.
yeah. I think my eyes turned red. Yeah. Ugh. Whatever. There's your change up. Now everybody's depressed. Don't crowd the plate. We're ready to throw the brush back. Let me ask you something. What in the ungodly hell is anybody going to do with a Last of Us remake? It feels like that game is like 5 minutes old. And I know that's hyperbolic. I know it's been around like, 8 years or whatever, but like the part 2 just came out. It still feels, if you play The Last of Us Part 1, that already feels like a game that somebody remade from something else. To me, it wasn't terribly innovative. It got all these props for, its crazy narrative that, everybody gives it a lot of credit for that. I'm not saying it doesn't deserve it, but like gameplay wise, it was good. But was it like once in a generation, you have to play this, don't miss this? You're living under a rock if you don't play it. Like, no, it wasn't as good as all that. And when you talk about the kinds of games that are getting remade, this one is very, very recent. I mean, I know what people out there are thinking. They're thinking, Cracks, aren't you the guy who told us to download and play the Final Fantasy VII remake? Yeah, I was. Cracks, aren't you the guy who bought and loved the Resident Evil 2 remake and told everybody you knew to play that too? Guilty as charged. You're not wrong. The big difference between those games, or a big difference between those games and The Last of Us remake, is The Last of Us is much more recent and is already the kind of game that you would remake it into, I feel like, right? So what then is the point? Who is this for? I have a theory, and it ties in a little bit with these rumors that have been swirling around about what's Hideo Kojima doing? Is he going to be making games for PlayStation, or is he getting poached by Microsoft? I'm hearing all kinds of crazy stuff, right? And it sort of falls in line with exactly this kind of thing, because video games are, at the end of the day, still a business. And that means that the people who make them, ultimately, the corporate suits behind all the decisions, they want to do things that are safe and not things that are risky. Businesses are always risk averse. They're always going to be risk averse. It's boring, but it makes them money. And so what has happened here, clearly, to me, it's obvious, is that some corporate suit somewhere is like, because it's so much less expensive, you got to understand, it's so much less expensive to reach back into stuff you already have and like revamp it, or reboot, I guess is the right word to use it, reboot it somehow. It's much less expensive to do that than it is to sink resources into something completely new. And so what you're witnessing here, folks, is the death of creativity. I'm sorry. This is how creativity starts to die. And it's when I hear about guys like Hideo Kojima, and feel about Kojima however you feel, whether you love what he does or despise what he does, what you can be sure of is that he's going to go wherever it is that gives him the most creative freedom. He's proven that time and time again. That's the same thing that happened with Konami. Konami decided one day that they were tired of taking risks and they wanted to get into the mobile game biz because that's where all the money was and is. You know, everybody's doing mobile games. That's what everybody's into. That's what Konami wanted to do. They didn't want to do any more of this visionary, risky stuff. Well, if you don't want to do risky stuff, Hideo Kojima is not really the dude you want to be working with. You know, like that's not really, that no longer fits your business model. And so, you know, in contrast to when the PS4 was new, now the narrative seems to go more and more in the direction of PlayStation and Sony generally seemed less interested in doing the independent stuff, or at least highlighting the independent stuff, and they seem to be drifting more and more closely to the big AAA stuff, this big formulaic stuff. And I think that's terrible. It's not that AAA stuff by itself is bad, but like if the attention to that comes at the expense of genuine originality, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. Like, you can take two AAA games that seem vastly different, like God of War and Control, two very, very different games, both AAA. But really, when you think about it, what's different is the aesthetic. Like, you can, they look different, they sound different, they're built differently, but they have the same sorts of narrative beats, the same sorts of gameplay beats, and nothing really surprises you, like from a gameplay perspective, or even honestly, even from a narrative perspective. They're not doing anything you've never seen before. They're just doing the same things a little bit differently, and they're doing the same things a little bit differently from each other. And so that's why, at the end of the day, there are a couple of AAA games that I like, but once you play those couple of AAA games, it happens like once every generation. There are a couple that are worth playing to me. But once you've played the ones that matter, you've played all the ones that don't already, because they're all just trying to iterate the same thing that's already proven to make money. Because at the end of the day, that's what these people are after. So why, you may ask, are they making a Last of Us remake? That's why, because it sold well, and there's still a bunch of buzz about The Last of Us 2. I guess people just aren't depressed enough. I don't know. So they finished The Last of Us 2, and they're like, hey, you know what? I could use more of that hopeless feeling in my gut that I got when I finished The Last of Us 2. I want more of that. Where can I get that? And Sony's like, hey, you want that? We will deliver, because we already know that made money, and that works for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just so exasperated, man. Like, it just doesn't seem to be going in a direction that is good for art.
Yeah. I mean, Jim Ryan, the president of Sony, is getting chastised for this because the exact reasons that you just spoke of is, you know, a lot of what's happening in today's market is video games cost astronomical amounts of money to make. And because of this, Sony isn't willing to take chances. Like, they want to just, a lot of people are going to hate this. They're going to hate me for this. They're going to take the Disney model of just, hey, here's a new Star Wars. Here's a new Star Wars. Hey, when was the last Wolverine movie we made? Hey, here's another Avengers. Like, it's just the same stuff over and over because it works. And, like, as long as people buy up The Last of Us 2, as long as it's Game of the Year, as long as Control's Game of the Year, as long as The Last of Us Remake is going to be up for Game of the Year, you know, Uncharted 7, whenever that shows up, like, you know, that's what Sony's going to keep doing. And the unfortunate thing is, you know, in the next, this, you know, a couple episodes back, you know, we talked a little bit about Xbox destroying Sony in the current console war, if there is one. This is another sign. Microsoft just has way more money to spend and possibly lose if they take a chance on a Hideo Kojima, and they're like, hey, free reign to do whatever you want. And if Kojima shows up and puts something out that nobody's seen before, and it is just the greatest thing in video gaming, that's very possible. It's very possible that he does that. Or if he does, you know, a Death Stranding 2 kind of game where it doesn't really hit as much as people hoped, that's no sweat off Microsoft, because, you know, they're going to hit on, you know, the next series of games that they do, where Sony, you know, they just don't have that they don't have that willingness to take a chance. They don't have that money to back it, and that's why 6 months from now we're gonna see Spider-Man Miles Morales 2 or whatever, Horizon
Never ends,
Zero
man.
Dawn 3. Like
Yeah,
it's a real shame, but it's
yeah.
the landscape that we live in,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
I was already annoyed by that whole thing with the Final Fantasy VII remake, the Resident Evil 2 remake, the Resident Evil 3 remake. I was already annoyed, and those are games that I liked. But what I'll say about those is that Final Fantasy VII remake is a completely different game from Final Fantasy VII. Resident Evil 2 remake is a completely different game from Resident Evil 2, the original, and I fail to see what they're going to do to The Last of Us, as recent as it is, that's going to make that a completely different game from what it already is. And if all they're going to do is change the narrative, just give you the perspective from someone else who was living during these times, and just give you a new story, I don't know, man. Like I just it just pains me to see imagination being wasted like that, because I know that there are a lot of people in the industry who don't want to just keep doing the same thing over and over again, but because they need jobs and they have to pull a paycheck, they don't have the luxury of doing the Kojima thing, be like, yeah, you know what, I'm not doing this, I'm going to do my own thing. Like, a lot of people can't do that, and so there's a lot of creativity, I'm convinced, gets wasted by corporate suits who don't want to take any chances. It's a bummer.
It is. It really is. That all that being said, I think what this means is it means a lot for the independent games that are out there. Is that it really puts I don't want to say that it puts a burden on them, but it does put a spotlight on them. Like, if you want to see original combat, you want to see original design, you want to see original graphics, you want to see original things, you're gonna have to look to the indie guys to do it, because Sony's just got the
Yeah, they
A
don't care no
squared
more. Yeah,
plus
they're
B
out.
squared equals C squared formula. Like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
this is the formula. As long as it meets that criteria, we'll keep going with it. And
Mhm.
it's a real shame. And hopefully this doesn't handcuff Sony and have Xbox just win the console war, because they've got a lot to deal with. And if this is true, and if Microsoft does sign Hideo Kojima to a 2 or 3 game contract, like, oh man, it's gonna look bad for Sony. But
Yeah, we'll see, I guess.
only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Job done. Let's bring him home. Bottom of the ninth. Is it possible in any way that The Legend of Zelda has been out for 35 years?
35 years, man.
I
It's
don't believe it.
unbelievable.
I don't believe it.
So last year, Nintendo celebrated Mario's 35th anniversary, and it just ended at the end of March. Nintendo put a game called Mario 35 on the Switch shop, where it was, you basically played the original Mario, but you played it against 34 other players. It was pretty cool. It was like a battle royale of sorts, and it was a lot of fun to play. And then I believe it was the end of March of this year, April 1st, they just took the ability to play that game away. And a lot of people looked at this as being the death of Mario. So a lot of gamer blogs out there, they talking about the death of Mario. And now, Nintendo's new focus is on the 35th anniversary of Zelda, which is it's really cool for all the Zelda fans out there. A lot of cool things came with the 35th anniversary of Mario. There was exclusive merch you could get that said the 35th anniversary. There's a lot of really cool things that took place, and Nintendo has put the direction to Zelda's 35th anniversary. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, to see if they do some kind of battle royale Zelda game. I don't know how that would
Yeah.
happen, but sign me
Right.
up. Sign me
Yeah,
up the
yeah.
moment that it shows up. And
Mhm.
whatever else they do, you got to expect that they knew this coming. So we'll probably see a a good AAA Zelda title sometime in the year. I'm sure they'll announce it at E3 here in a few months, but
Yeah.
it'll just be interesting to see. But it's crazy to believe that 35 years
Dude.
ago.
Yeah. Mind blowing. Like, I wasn't even alive 35 years ago. You know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's it's crazy. It's crazy. Like it's when I think about the fact that that game's literally been around my entire life, my mind gets blown.
Yeah.
Totally blown. You know, like if they don't make, I'm gonna be a little disappointed if they're not making replica Master Swords.
Oh man.
Come on.
Yeah, they're gonna go all out. They're gonna
Yeah.
go all out. There's no telling what it is they do, but it's gonna be all out. I'm expecting remakes of every Zelda game that was on the Nintendo DS or Game Boy or any of those lesser known consoles. I'm expecting a remake of all those games, a Breath of the Wild 2, like all.
Even that one that was like super bad. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
There's been a
There's,
few.
there was
There's
there
been
was
a
one
few.
that everybody hates, and I forget what it's called. But it's like it's got this like super weird kind of animation style in it, and Link is kind of a perv. You know the one
Man,
I'm talking about?
no, I don't know.
Yeah, it was just this super random sort of Zelda game that came out a while back, and it's just universally reviled among video game players and Zelda fans especially, just because it's just so berserk. I
Yeah.
forget what it's called.
I think the craziest one I played was the Hyrule Warriors. It was like Dynasty Warriors, but with Zelda characters.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was probably
That's what that game was.
the weirdest Zelda game that I had played.
That is pretty weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Dynasty Warriors, that's a really good allegory to what video games are becoming, right? Like that's where we're headed. I hope you all like Dynasty Warriors because that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
Is everything's going to be? They're not. I mean, they're not going to call it that. They're going to make The Last of Us remake, and then they're going to make another sequel to The Last of Us, but it's not going to be called The Last of Us. It'll be called something else. They're not going to put it in your face like that. But that's where we're headed. Mark my words, people. Mark my words.
Well,
I
the
digress.
unfortunate thing is that's where we're headed as PlayStation fans. I wouldn't be surprised if this time next year you and I are both talking about Xbox Series X,
Yeah,
and
there's right.
we got
There's
different gamer
different
tags
banners
down
down here.
there. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, when I saw that rumor about Kojima possibly getting contracted with Microsoft, I was like, oh, that's. I mean, look, Hideo Kojima. For those who don't know, Hideo Kojima is 100% of the reason I have been a PlayStation dude. I have always loved what that guy did, all the way from. I mean, well, the first one was kind of a coincidence. Like I had the original PlayStation, played Metal Gear Solid, loved it, been hooked ever since, and then I made the decision of which console I was going to buy almost entirely based on which console Hideo Kojima was making games for. And when I found out that MGS4 was a PlayStation 3 exclusive, I mean, my decision was made. And when I found out that MGS5 was coming to PS4 first, my decision was made. And guess what? If I find out that Hideo Kojima is making games for Xbox and not PlayStation, I don't really like the controller of Xbox very much, but I'm going to try to get used to it because if that's
Yeah.
where Kojima's going, that's where the good stuff is going to be. Regardless of how you might feel about him and what he does, he follows creative liberty, and which means that there's going to be other stuff that's been made by independent people who are interested in making something original.
Yeah, and in my opinion, Sony's done a lot of corporate stuff over the past 10, 15 years, and they have shafted me so many times. Like right now, I'm looking at a PlayStation TV that's trash. I'm looking at another PlayStation TV, the thing that you had to buy to remote play your PlayStation 4 because you could only have one username per console.
Yeah.
That was a piece of trash. They stopped support of that thing. I'm looking at two Move controllers, and it wasn't for PSVR. Those things would have been sitting in a closet for 4 years. I've bought into all the stuff that Sony's dished out. The Vita. Oh, that's going to remote play your PlayStation 3. Yeah, that just never came. They didn't start remote play until well after the PlayStation 4 years. So they've
Yeah.
been doing corporate lies to me for a long, long time. And I'll tell you, if it weren't for PSVR, I would have already had a Series X over a PlayStation 5.
Hmm.
So, all it really takes is, Bethesda's gone over to Xbox. If Elder Scrolls 6 or whatever next game that Bethesda does, if that comes exclusive to Xbox, I'm out. I'm out. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not saying I'm never gonna touch my PlayStation 5 again. It's just, I'm gonna have both of them. I'm gonna have both systems. Kojima goes over, I'll scoop his game up and I'll play whatever else Xbox Game Pass has on
Yeah. Right.
on deck. And
Yeah.
I'm probably not gonna look back, because when it comes to customer loyalty, like, man, I've been there since day one. And then when PlayStation 5 is released, Sony sent me an email saying like, hey, look, if you want a PlayStation 5, they're going to be in low demand. We appreciate you. Sign up for this thing. We'll make sure that you get one. Yeah, that never happened. Like, they never made sure that I got one.
Yeah.
I signed up. They never followed up on that email. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of been the straw that's broke the camel's back. They're doing it with the DualSense controllers. Is Nintendo had the Switch had the terrible drift issue with their Joy-Cons and caught a huge lawsuit over them, and Nintendo's just been replacing Joy-Con after Joy-Con. And Sony's like, hey, yeah, we're going to use the same joysticks for our PlayStation 5 controllers. Like, ugh, you guys. Ugh. Ugh. So a lot of people hate Jim Ryan, much like I hate Roger Goodell, and
Yeah.
I'm starting to see a lot of the resemblance. And everybody's waiting for Jim Ryan's big counter to the Xbox Game Pass. So we'll see what he comes up with, and it better be damn good. It better be damn good, because
Better be good.
otherwise he's losing this war.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's that.
What a
Got it
sad
all out in
show.
the
We
open.
talked about Shadowmere's death, Crack's
Yeah.
buried Shadow of Colossus.
Hmm.
Now we're talking about how Xbox is about to bury Sony, and Sony's just regurgitating the same crap over
Yeah.
and over. Like, oh no.
It's more
What a
deaths than a season of Game of Thrones in here.
Yeah, what a sad show. You know what?
Sad.
You should still dislike and subscribe. Uh, Tune in next week. It'll be a lot
They know they
happier, I
like the
promise.
drama. They're gonna play the Last of Us remake. They don't care. They're gonna buy the Last of Us remake and they're gonna play it specifically because they want to be depressed. You all know it's true. Don't try lying to me. I know. I know what you're gonna do. Like and subscribe. If you can pay $60 or maybe even $70 for the Last of Us remake, you can like and subscribe this channel. All right. Well, I guess there's nothing left to do but give a shout out to John Bernthal. John, keep up the good work out there, man.
All right.
And if you have any of this out there that you want to chime in on, let us know what's up in the comments. We're just a couple of randos here on the internet talking about things. The more the merrier, I say.
Yep. Seize up, hose down. We out of here.
See you next week.